Well, growing up as a Unitarian, even 10 years before the merger with Universalism, I formed the distinct impression that science was a huge threat to religion, except to Unitarianism. I felt some pride in that, but as I got older, it also seemed to bother me somewhat. The positive spin on Unitarian compatibility with anything scientific rested with our proud tradition of rational thought. Since science required reason and religion depended on faith, a religion then that embraced reason seemed rare and therefore receptive to new discoveries about the world. So the ultimate question for society was whether they would place their trust in scientific views, things like creation and natural law, or in religious truth, where, frankly, evidence was scant. I remember how Unitarians felt a tad of superiority in its embrace of science. And in the 50s and 60s especially, Unitarianism and science seemed to be cut from the same cloth. But I remember thinking, where is the faith component in Unitarianism? Science doesn't threaten us because there's no there there to be threatened. Scientific worldviews, such as evolution, clash with creation stories, but pose no threat if a religion focused exclusively on this world with an intellectual approach to anything supernatural. Some decades ago, science presented a cosmic view which, for all practical reasons, seemed irreconcilable with religion. As late as the 90s, Stephen Jay Gould, the Harvard paleontologist, tried to resolve the conflict between science and religion with his essay on non-overlapping magisteria. That'll do the trick, right? Science and religion, he claimed, each had its own legitimate magisterium, or its own domain of authority, and the two domains just didn't overlap. But he was rightly challenged over where the boundaries between the two magisteria should be. He made it sound as though science and religion were involved in parallel play. But it doesn't work that way. Traditional religion continued to be vulnerable, where new scientific discoveries would undermine the religious narratives of old. So once again, Unitarianism comes out smelling like a rose, professing to be the religion of the contemporary mind. And it was in the 1950s and 60s when Unitarianism enjoyed its largest growth in membership, a perfect fit for the inquiring mind at a time when people felt they had to commit either to science or to religion. Unitarianism boasted that it could straddle both religion and science. But Unitarianism did not possess a faith tradition planted in a pre-scientific world. So historically, Unitarianism sprang up at the same time as the scientific revolution, which ran from about 1550 to 1700. The spirit of the inquiring mind began in earnest during the Renaissance, which then triggered the scientific revolution. Leonardo da Vinci is a great example of a profoundly new inquiry into the physical world. And by 1453, Copernicus turned religion upside down with the scientific claims that the earth was not the center of the universe, and of course that the sun did not revolve around the earth. That discovery was made 17 years before the word Unitarian was even uttered. When King John decided to turn Transylvania into a Unitarian kingdom in 1560. So just as Unitarianism was beginning to spread its wings, a whole new worldview was beginning to take shape in such fields as anatomy, botany, astronomy, mathematics. Now, Unitarianism was essentially birthed in a time of great scientific inquiry, and it embraced it. The seeds of Unitarianism, with its emphasis on the inquiring scientific mind, took root then in England and colonial America during which period? During the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment spanned roughly from 1650 to 1800. So Unitarianism was part of the movement that swept away the medieval worldviews and inspired a revolution in science and philosophy and inquiry. Science never posed an issue to Unitarians, not because we were inherently smarter or scientifically gifted, but because our roots do not go back in antiquity where traditional views were suddenly challenged. Unitarianism is, in fact, a product of the scientific revolution. We have no old traditions, customs, worldviews, or teachings that may feel compromised by today's sophistication, wrought mainly by huge scientific discoveries. I'm intrigued, very much so, of the efforts made by old religious traditions to bridge the gaps between scientific and religious assumptions. My curiosity was especially roused in light of current attempts by scientists at Emory University working with the Dalai Lama and 6 other Tibetan Buddhist monks in their effort to merge the hard science of the laboratory with the soft science of the meditative mind. Basic fundamental differences between science and early Buddhist teachings exist. For example, quantum theory tells us that the world is a product of random events. Buddhism teaches that nothing happens without a cause, trapping the universe in an unending karmic cycle. According to one observer, Kim Severinsen, reconciling life is random, life is karmic seems as challenging as trying to explain Higgs boson to a kindergarten class. A significant segment of this project in Emory is to try to understand and even quantify the power of meditation in a way that the scientific world might actually accept. We basically have a tension between the truths of the material world and those of the spiritual. But what is it about Buddhism, different from Christianity, and even 600 years older than Christianity, that enables it to be in conversation with science in non-threatening ways? Christianity, especially conservative Christianity, has, at least from my perspective, degenerated into an anti-science. But what is it about Buddhism that enables it to coexist so comfortably with science and everything else in the modern world? Stephen Prothero, from the religion department at Boston University, offers an easy roadmap, even a formula, to understanding how religions differ, giving us some insight into why Buddhism can adapt more easily to modern times than other faiths. He points out that every religion, be it Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, can be understood by its four-part approach to the big cosmic concerns. Each religion has to, this is how you define a religion, each religion has to articulate A, a problem, B, the solution to the problem, which serves as the religious goal, 3, a technique for moving from the problem to the solution, and then last, the exemplar or exemplars who chart the path from problem to solution. So you look at the cosmic sphere, you got your problem, what's the solution, how do we work that solution, and who are the examples who've done that. So taking that schema, let's take a look at Christianity. The problem, how's the problem stated? Sin. Okay. Sin is the problem. The solution to the problem, salvation. The technique for achieving salvation is some combination of faith and good works. Who are the exemplars? Well, every saint. You can take a look at Mother Teresa, perhaps, as a good example. Let's compare that with Buddhism. Buddhism, from its very inception, understands itself to be really quite different because the problem it addresses is not sin. The problem it starts out with is suffering. The solution, or the goal, is nirvana. The technique for achieving nirvana is the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes the classic Buddhist practice of meditation. And the exemplars who chart this path are, of course, the bodhisattvas. So this very simple scheme helps us identify differences among religious traditions. Are Buddhists trying to achieve salvation? Of course not, since they don't believe in sin. Are Christians trying to achieve nirvana? Not really, because for them, suffering is not something that must be overcome. In fact, suffering might even be a good thing. You get some brownie points in advance. I think that's why the Da Vinci Code was so controversial. So I think we see already how Buddhism is more adaptable to the modern world than Christianity. Sin and the solution to sin are buried in supernatural stories that have no bearing on the world as it is understood today. Whereas suffering and the release of suffering are framed and understood as experiences in the material world. So rather than trying to end up saved in some heavenly realm, Buddhism deals with the demands of this world and can therefore feel unthreatened by any new claims made in the scientific or material world.